Hi everybody. So we are now officially wrapping up our poetry unit and moving swiftly on into our very first novel unit. In the first book we're going to be reading together is The Giver by Lois Lowry. I am super duper excited about this particular book. I think you guys are really going to like it. It was a very popular one last year when I read it with my students last year, so I have good feeling about this one. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Um, Really quick, I will tell you what to write and what not to write. As always, with your notes, you need to be handwritten. And then I will create a submission space for you to post a picture of your handwritten notes too so that I can check them. All right, let's get started. Okay, you do not have to write this. I'm just giving you some background information about what we can expect with this book. So, The Giver by Lois Lowry is set in the future of a dystopian society, and we talked about dystopias pretty briefly with Harrison Bergeron. We're going to get in more in depth with those as we read this book, so be prepared for that. Life as we know it no longer exists, and the memory of it doesn't exist either. So, what that means is 2020 and everything before it, and anything after it, depending on when this community was set up, doesn't exist anymore. And there is no memory of it, there's no recorded history. Only one person in this entire community knows anything about what happened before the community became a thing. So, pretty interesting setup to begin with. And the general idea is that everyone is equal. There is no pain, fear, war, hatred, or choice. Just to give you some background info. So let's go ahead and move on. I would recommend writing this one down just because with your notes, guys, I forgot to mention, you will be able to use your notes on the unit test over the book. So I would recommend taking very diligent notes. It's going to be interesting how we read as far as this book goes. So just to keep that in mind. Anyway, I'm sorry. So go ahead and take notes as best you can, and you can use those notes on the test. So you need to write this down essentially. So some elements of the dystopian novel, just to refresh your memories, and if you weren't here when we read Harrison Bergeron, then to give you some new information. We have blind consent from all citizens. So everybody has to be a willing participant in this community in order for things to work. Even if one person, just like in Harrison Bergeron, steps out of line, the whole system falls apart or it can cause problems, right? We have distrust of the outside world. So everything in the community is set up a certain way. Everything beyond that community doesn't exist. It doesn't matter. It could be bad. Maybe the government tells the people that you could die if you cross that boundary line. So everything beyond the community is bad. We have constant government surveillance, so Big Brother is always watching. And then finally, your personal choice and individuality are taken away. Then we have our literary elements. You don't have to write this slide down because we're going to break down each of these as we go. But just to give you some a heads up, we're going to talk about imagery, flashbacks, foreshadowing, figurative language, the themes that we're going to be seeing in The Giver, and symbolism. You already know what imagery is, so you don't have to write this slide down. I would write the header, though, just so that you know that there is imagery in this book. But just like we have seen with the short stories and the poems that we've read and literally everything else that you're going to read in life, imagery is included in this. And to refresh your memories, imagery is the use of words to create those images in our head. So they appeal to the five senses, just like the examples I have down here, especially the first one, that help us create that image in our brain. So the girl ran her hands on the soft satin fabric of the blanket. So those details, those words like soft and satin, we help us almost be able to feel the blanket ourselves, and that's what imagery is. Then we have flashbacks. You do need to write this slide. If you already know what it is, still write it down. Flashbacks are an interruption of the chronological order. So chronological means if we were to map out the the timeline of the book, the flashbacks interrupt that timeline. So it upsets the chronological order of the story to revisit an event that happened in the past. So we see flashbacks a lot in this book with memories of the past. So like I said before, only one person knows any history of what happened to the world before the community began. And that person will have constant flashbacks about the past. So just something to keep in mind. We have foreshadowing. You need to write this slide down. And foreshadowing is when the author gives the reader a hint of what is going to happen later in the book. This helps create suspense to keep you all interested, and it can come in the way of dialogue, events or actions, the title of the story, and anything else really. And I will point out foreshadowing as we read, but you need to know what it is obviously before we can begin doing that. So go ahead and write this slide down. We will move on. We have figurative language, and you already know what figurative language is, whether you realize it or not. You do not have to write this slide down if you don't want to. But figurative language are those parts of speech that we use to be more effective, impactful, persuasive, in our words, in our writing, in our speeches, whatever it is that we're using figurative language in. And a lot of the times it's to go beyond the literal meaning of words. And figurative language includes metaphor, idioms, similes, allusions, etc. So all stuff that we have already seen in the other things that we have read so far this year. The themes that we're going to be seeing in The Giver include coming of age. We have memory. So again, those flashbacks and memory kind of go hand in hand. We have social order, so how this community is organized based off of social order, so how people are kind of ranked as far as the community goes. We have character growth, and we're going to see this specifically with our main character and even some of our secondary characters. And then finally, back to the dystopia. So dystopia is a pretty big one in this book. And finally, our symbolism, and you already know what symbolism is. I forgot to mention, you need to write the theme slide down. You do not need to write down symbolism because you should already know what it is. But to refresh your memories, symbolism is a form of figurative language that allows objects to represent another idea or quality. So an example would be the bald eagle is a symbol for freedom. The dove is a symbol for peace. And we've already talked about symbolism, so you should have a pretty good idea of what that is. That is all that I have for you. I forgot to mention at the beginning of the video. So this is all these notes will go in your notebook. Any in-class work that we do, you won't have to worry about because obviously that'll be a separate submission space for you all to post to, being online students. And as far as vocab goes, for this novel, we will have 40 vocab words. Before you freak out, they will be chunked. So 1 week you'll have 10 words, another week you'll have 10 words, and so on. So for 4 weeks, you'll have 10 words a week. That way it's not so overwhelming, and those will be due at the end of every week. So you don't have to worry too much about not being able to get those done. And I will obviously give you a heads up when we are nearing the due date for the vocab. So that's all I have for you. I'm really looking forward to reading this novel with you guys. Again, as always, if you need anything, you can email or message me, and I will talk to you all later. Thank you.